So many people on TV are waffling about where is this country in its rapid descent toward dictatorship? How far along are we on that slide toward authoritarianism? Rachel just pulls off the band-aid. She says, you know what, folks? It's here. Watch this.
We have crossed a line. We are in a place we did not want to be, but we are there. The thing we were all warning about for the last few years is not coming, it is here. Life in the United States is profoundly changing, is profoundly different than it was even 6 months ago. Because we do now live in a country that has an authoritarian leader in charge. We have a consolidating dictatorship in our country. And it sounds melodramatic to say it, I know, but just go with that for a minute, right? Think in melodramatic terms, think in cinematic terms. Imagine the cartoon level caricature of what you think a dictatorship looks like. I mean, it's secret police, right? A massive, anonymous, unbadged, literally masked, totally unaccountable internal police force that apparently has infinite funding, but no identifiable leadership. And they act in ways designed to instill maximum fear and use maximum force. I mean, when you imagine an authoritarian country, right, what you imagine is masked secret police breaking people's car windows and snatching people off the streets and out of church parking lots and courtroom hallways and taking them away with no charges, no notice, no paperwork, no explanation, not letting them see lawyers, and then moving them secretly to what are effectively black site prisons, where they won't tell you who's there and where no one's allowed in to see what's going on. Right? And that kind of a cartoon caricature of an authoritarian country, the one you might have imagined in melodramatic and cinematic terms ever before we got here, you would expect, right, that you'd have a scapegoated minority group blamed for all things. In our case, immigrants, right? And the new extraordinary powers and shows of force by the secret police, among other things. All these extraordinary powers and shows of force will be framed as necessary to stop this terrible internal enemy, right? Frame everything as immigration enforcement. Because for immigration enforcement, not only is all force justified, but maximum force is preferred. And they're trying to make it into a national entertainment to threaten to feed immigrants to alligators in South Florida. Right? They're making them eat off dishes on the floor like they're dogs. The Chrome Detention Center in Florida. They want us to like that, right? The Republican Party wants to sell t-shirts about that. And if you think it's only about immigrants, take the president's own word for it when he says the homegrowns are next. And then he starts musing publicly about which Americans he intends to strip of their citizenship. In a cartoon caricature of an authoritarian country, displays of military might are not just for the country's external enemies, they're for the country's own people, right? Because in an authoritarian country, you turn military force inward toward the people of that country. And so now we've got these large and expanding military zones in multiple states where they have extended the legal boundaries of nearby military bases to include hundreds and hundreds of miles of nearby land. So they can give active duty US troops the power to arrest and search people on US soil. They're now doing that over hundreds of miles of territory in multiple states. Both The Intercept and the New Republic in the last couple of days have had new reporting about Trump administration plans to permanently integrate the active duty US military into, of course, immigration enforcement. So we will have our own US military troops mobilized on US soil, US military force turn inward on us in an ongoing and permanent way. For immigration enforcement, right? And like they tried in LA, to put down protests against the government, because those protests relate to immigration enforcement. What else do you think of when you think of authoritarian countries? I mean, in the worst case, you think of death camps. We don't have those. What we do have are black site prison camps, including huge new ones that are designed to hold thousands of people. The biggest ones we've yet had have just been bidded out to contractors for construction, and they're building them now on US military bases. And they say they want states to build them all over the country. in the cartoon character of an authoritarian state, there's secret police, there's prison camps, there's the scapegoated enemy on whom all things must be blamed and against whom all things are justified. Protests must be criminalized. Media must be intimidated into saying and doing what the leader wants, or they must be shut down, or both. Universities must be intimidated into saying and doing what the leader wants, or they must be shut down, or both. Law firms must be intimidated into not opposing him and saying and doing what he wants, or they must be shut down. In institutions like that, it's not just the boldest or most strident critics of the president who must be shut down. It's the most mainstream, right? It's the most prestigious, the most credible, because that's what's so dangerous about them. There can't be any source of authority. There can't be any source of authoritative statements of fact that compete with what the leader insists must be the new truth. And so government departments will be stripped of their experts, and he will fire his way through them until they tell him things that he wants to be told. If you want to be a 4-star general or admiral in this military, you must now pass a personal one-on-one interview with the president, who personally will decide if you are to his liking or not to be a flag officer in this military. The intelligence agencies will say that his strike on Iran obliterated their nuclear program because he likes that word obliterated, and he said it once. And therefore, because he said it, it must be true. And if you say otherwise, you will be fired. The Justice Department will say that the president won not just the last election, but he also won the one before that, the one he actually lost. And anybody who points out that Russia tried to help him win the one before that should be criminally charged for saying that, even though it's true. We are not heading towards something like this. We are there. It is here. It is the environment in which we are now living. And so, given that you now live in a country with an authoritarian leader, the question is, what can you do for your country?
She goes on to say, as this democracy hangs by a thread, we have all the tools available at our disposal to use to defend that democracy. We will never have more tools. We have the opportunity to get together and protest, to speak our minds, to write letters to the editor, to defend the powerless. I can guarantee you, in Putin's Russia, people wish that they had the opportunity to get together in a public square and protest against Putin. In Hungary, Viktor Orban, I guarantee you people wish there was still an independent media to speak their minds. Even though those things, those tools, those institutions are under attack here in the United States, we still have them. We can use them. We need to use them, because if we don't, they can be stripped away just like they were in Russia and Hungary and Venezuela and so many other countries that descended into authoritarianism. It's almost gotten cliche to say that it cannot happen here in the United States of America. There was that book, 1935, Sinclair Lewis, It Can't Happen Here, a novel that envisions what it looks like if fascism does happen here in the US. More recently, How Democracies Died by Stephen Levitsky and Daniel Ziblatt during the first Trump term. Here's how they introduce it. Is our democracy in danger? It's a question we never thought we'd be asking. We've been colleagues for 15 years. Thinking, writing, teaching students about failures of democracies in other places and times. Europe's dark 1930s, Latin America's repressive 1970s. We've spent years researching new forms of authoritarianism emerging around the globe. For us, how and why democracies die has been an occupational obsession, but now we find ourselves turning to our own country. Or the book by the fascism expert Timothy Snyder, On Tyranny, 20 Lessons from the 20th Century, where he talks about the politics of inevitability. In other words, this myth that American democracy is just inevitable. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy that will become more and more of a democracy over time. No, he says, if you once believed that everything always turns out well in the end, you can be persuaded that nothing turns out well in the end. If you once did nothing because you thought progress is inevitable, you can continue to do nothing because you think time moves in repeating cycles. It can happen here. We will never have more tools at our disposal, and those tools can be taken away from us. We need to use them to stop the slide toward fascism. We need to use them to stand up against dictatorship.
And so Americans are using those tools, and it is worth paying attention to the ways they are doing it. They are filming the secret police and publicizing everything they are doing. Even when the secret police scream and threaten and say, you're not allowed to film us, they are filming them. They're following them everywhere they go. They're not letting them have the power of surprise, refusing to be afraid to watch them and record them and show what they are doing. We have opposition politicians, Democratic politicians, insisting on being let in, going to the black site immigration prisons and demanding to be let into them. We have Americans protesting outside those facilities and showing up and calling the media and pulling every string they can when someone they know or someone they know of gets taken. Americans are making it as sticky and annoying and awkward and embarrassing as possible for these guys, and that slows them down. Americans are badgering elected Republicans everywhere they're willing to show their faces, including tonight in Nebraska, Republican Congressman Mike Flood holding a town hall with his red state constituents. Watch.
Hi, I implore you to be quiet so that we can hear his responses. Remember, Mike's coming up for a re-election, and we'd really like to know what his responses are. I'm Rosina. I write you emails with concerns of your voting behavior regarding Trump and his actions. You support him, especially confirming the cabinet. Your responses are riddled with misinformation and lies. I fact check you, and then I send the responses back. And I get crickets. If I am fact checking them because they are wrong in your response, I send them back to you and I get crickets, I get kind of bummed. And this is not about partisan, this is about issues, because we're about to lose our democracy.
My question is fiscal. With $450 million FEMA dollars being reallocated to open Alligator Alcatraz and $600 million taxpayer FEMA dollars being used to now open more concentration camps and ICE burning through $8.4 million a day to illegally detain people, how much does it cost for fascism?